Thousands of years ago, a time when the rainforests of West Africa were dense with vegetation and animals lived free of threat, humankind had made an agreement with the animals. The forest would provide them with land to farm and keep their livestock, food and water, but they were never to wander into the deep forest. For years there was harmony. There was an abundance of food and no illness to hinder the growth of humans. One day, a man named Dayu was walking along the edge of the village and deep forest. Dayu, in his younger days, enjoyed torturing and beheading stray cats. No one knew what, but everyone knew there was something bad in him from the start. He had gotten into trouble many times, and even after many scoldings, he continued with his unsettling behavior. He stopped at a clearing and stared out into the forest thicket. The glistening green leaves, the cawing of birds he had never seen before, the smell of damp, rich soil, the unknown beckoned to him. The animals must be hiding something in the depth of the forest, he thought. There must be some treasure. Why else would we be stopped from entering the forest? He turned and looked back to the village. With no one in sight to stop him, he took his first steps towards the forest. The earth felt damp and cool against his feet, welcoming him in. As he moved through the forest, he was struck with wonder. The trees were so tall that they could touch the sun, leaves so green that they glistened like jewels on the king's crown. There was fruit dispersed on the ground. He picked one up. His eyes lit up with joy as he tasted it. He sucked the nectar from the fruit and threw the rest of it back onto the ground. He gathered a few more and stuffed them in his trousers. No wonder the animals didn't want humans in the forest. They were keeping all these treasures to themselves. Above him, he saw macaws cawing away, their feathers decorated with the most beautiful colors. I shall pluck its feathers to make the most magnificent cape for myself, and everyone shall be envious of me, he thought. With that, he set off to find a long branch to strike them down. He walked deeper into the forest, but this time, none of the sights and smells fascinated him. His mind was set on the feathers of the macaw. He found the branch of a low-lying tree to be exactly what he was looking for. He grabbed the branch and hung on to it, trying to separate it from the tree. The tree, incidentally, was at the heart of a group of chimpanzees. They had made their nests for their young in it. The young chimpanzees screeched at Dayu for waking them from their afternoon nap. Bemba, the alpha male of the chimps, immediately responded. He puffed out his chest and began to roar. Then he beat his fists on his chest to warn off the intruder. Instead of fear, Dayu's eyes widened in awe. His eyes focused down to where Bemba's fists were beating his chest. Thump, 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 thump. At first, Bemba's thumping was slow, but when he realized Dayu was not warned off, he jumped off his branch onto the forest floor. The other chimpanzees stayed above on their branches, hooting, barking, and screeching. Bemba stood on his two hind legs and began thumping his chest again, but this time increasing the pace of the beat. Thump, thump, thump. Thump, thump, thump. But Dayu just stared. This beautiful sound was unlike anything he had ever heard before. Dayu forgot all about the macaw feathers and focused his attention on Bemba's chest. "Creature," he called out to Bemba, "I want the skin of your chest, for it makes the most wonderful sound I have ever heard. Give it to me, and I shall not harm any of your people." Bemba roared with anger. The audacity of this human. Bemba charged at Dayu. In a typical situation, Bemba would have easily overpowered Dayu, but when they clashed, Bemba was overcome by a sharp shooting pain in his chest. It paralyzed him. He looked up, and there he saw Dayu giving him an evil smile, with blood dripping from his hands. In a battle of strength, deceit had won. Dayu had plunged a blade into the heart of a warrior. Bemba, stunned at the ploy, dropped to the ground. With his dying breath, he spoke. "You might have bested me in this fight, but I curse you and all those who get pleasure from my death, for nothing but death can be begotten from death." The chimpanzees above howled. They were horrified by such a crime, for nothing like this had ever happened in the forest before. Death was seen as a part of life. Animals hunted each other for food, but never for such selfish reasons. With only greed in his eyes, Dayu began to skin Bemba. The animals above, stunned at the horror unfolding in front of their eyes, scattered into the forest. He whistled happily as he skillfully pulled the skin from the motionless body. Once he carefully set aside the skin, he then went on to remove the bones from the chimp's arms and legs to make a mounting. He used vines from the trees to hold the skin and bones together. He stretched the beautiful black skin over the bones, with blood still dripping from it. He decorated the edges of the drum with sticks he found off the forest floor. When he was finally done, he gleefully clapped his hands together. As a final act of selfishness, he placed the skinned head of Bemba on the base of his instrument. Then he placed the drum on his shoulder and walked towards the village, humming as he went on his merry way. The villagers immediately gathered around him out of concern. Where had he been, and what was that he was carrying? Dayu held the drum high, like spoils from war, and said, "My people, behold, I have brought to you the most magnificent drum you have ever seen, with the most wonderful sound you have ever heard. Its sound will transport you to the land of bliss. I call it Djembe. And after listening to this, I have no doubt you will all be ready to marry your daughters to me." The village chief made his way through the crowd to Dayu, but the sight of the instrument stopped him dead in his tracks. "Dayu, what have you done? This head, this instrument? It looks like the head of an animal of the forest." "It is," exclaimed Dayu arrogantly. "No," cried the chief. "This crime has endangered us all. You broke our pact with the animals." Dayu snorted. "What? Those creatures? They're weak compared to our strength. But you must all see the wonders of that forest. Those magnificent colors, the sights, the fruits. We must claim it as our own." "Silence!" yelled the chief. "We must beg the animals for forgiveness, for this is too heinous of a crime." Dayu laughed again. "Oh, chief, let me play for you, and you will change your mind." Dayu sat and began to play. Tap tap, then boom boom. He hit the skin, slowly at first. In disgust, the chief and some of the villagers stormed away. "We will have to leave our homes. The animals will never forgive us for Dayu's crime," thought the chief. Dayu began to change the tone by slapping along the edge and then back to the center. Those that stayed were entranced. At first, they began to sway their hips to the sound of the music. Then, as the thumping increased in pace and variation, the villagers began to move their hands and feet in sync with the rhythm. They began to dance more and more feverishly. The ecstasy of the moment caused Dayu to shake his head, and some of the villagers began to ululate until the weariness in his arms caused him to stop playing. But the moment the song stopped, all those enjoying the music fell. The curse of Bemba had come true. The silence echoed through the village. Only a gentle wind washed through. Those that had walked away earlier returned to the scene, only to find the dead bodies of men, women, and children sprawled on the ground. Only Djembe stood tall. Terrified, the chief turned to the remaining villagers and said, "We must get out of here. Dayu has awoken a curse from the forest. We need to leave immediately." With that, the remaining villagers took little that they could carry and left. They moved far south of the West African forests, never to return. Since then, the forest has never allowed any humans to set foot on its land again. Djembe, surrounded by human skeletons, still stands today. It serves as a warning to all those who dare to threaten the forest.